Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and today, to ring in the new year, we've received what I think is a pretty surprising but undoubtedly exciting update for one of Massive Entertainment's developers of The Division next big undertaking, the Star Wars project. And why I want to cover this is because this project has a lot of correlation to the very anxiously awaited but not confirmed Division 3 game, and that's for several reasons, so we're going to break it all down, but this should be a pretty fun one to go through, so let's get to it. And let us begin with just a bit of context for this Star Wars game, because I'm sure there's some people watching who don't really know much of the backstory here about how it connects to The Division. Massive Entertainment is of course lead developer on The Division 1 and 2, and they also spearheaded development on The Division 2's 2020 expansion, Warlords of New York. Unbeknownst to us at the time, but as we learn later, it was after Warlords launch when many of The Division 2's team began to be siphoned off to go work on this new Star Wars game, and it's alleged that Ubisoft signed the deal to make the game back in 2019. With the benefit of hindsight, we can go back and kind of see that with The Division 2's Year 2 content following WONI, there was a bit of a content decline in terms of the volume and depth of new content and features that were being released each season. And at the time, we hoped that this was because Massive was gearing up towards a full development on a Division 3, but then we learned in January of 2021, so 2 years ago now, that's crazy, that the studio was in development on a new Star Wars game. This sent the Division community into a spiral because we had no idea what was going to come next, and that whole story is kind of what led us to getting the Year 4 content that we're now in the midst of, so I think most of you know that tale. But what's important to keep in mind is that while Massive has two other major games they're making, Avatar and Star Wars, the vast majority of the Division's old team is on the latter. Undoubtedly, Avatar has some old Division people, but given that game began development around 2017, I believe it started simultaneously to when the Division team was really ramping up on the Division 2. And there have been blogs and interviews and stories and whatnot explaining how Massive created almost two adjacent studios, one for Division and one for Avatar, so the two teams didn't even need to mingle too much. And so of course that was until 2020 when major portions of the Division 2's team was being moved over to Star Wars. This includes the likes of Julian Garrity, the Division 1 and 2's old creative director, Frederick Thylander, the weapons guy, Drew Reckner, who did a bunch of AI stuff on Division and eventually became co-game director, if I recall correctly, so a ton. Pretty much all of the old core team. The people who used to be on State of the Game, everyone. And that's what led to Yannick, Pale, and some of the few remaining Division 2 devs to need to build the new team that we have today. That led to the onboarding of Morton, Daria, Ubisoft Bucharest, etc. And so, like I said, close to exactly 2 years ago is when we got that announcement from them that they were working on a Star Wars game. Now, I always expected that game's development would go pretty smoothly. They're making the game with Snowdrop, the same engine that was made and learned by this exact team for them to make the Division 1 and 2. It's had improvements over time to it to increase its efficiency with them using it. The game is confirmed to be third person, same as Division, so clearly this team has experience with that. All of that being said, I'm not sure I expected things to go quite this well. What am I talking about? Well, you may have heard me mention in a few of my past videos and on stream that Massive has made this post recently advertising that they're going to begin playtests for the Star Wars game in the very near future. That itself was absolutely exciting, but not terribly surprising for me personally. Like I said, the game's been in full development since early to mid 2020. I'm sure they made good progress, but it turns out that's not the only update we've gotten, because Julian Garrity, who again was the old creative director on the Division 1 and 2, is now creative director on the Star Wars project, and he tweeted this just the other day. Happy New Year to you all. 2023 is going to be huge for us. Join the adventure. #Massive Star Wars. And like you can see, that's alongside a photo of the Star Wars project collaboration artwork. So wow, I think this is pretty wild. Ubisoft is notoriously scrutinous with their PR stuff. Now I'm sure Julian probably didn't go through PR for this. It's his own personal Twitter account, but my point is you don't make that kind of claim unless, yes, indeed 2023 is going to be a huge year for the Star Wars project. And we'll get to Division 3 shortly, but this statement has of course led to the question, does this mean that the Star Wars game is releasing this year? That's the million-dollar question. It's certainly not impossible. I think there is a legitimate chance that it could. However, I'm not necessarily convinced. If I had to put $10 down on it, I'd probably say Q1 or Q2 of 2024. That said, I think this unquestionably means that we're going to get lots of information and news and almost certainly the full reveal of the game this year. If I had to guess, I'd say E3, assuming Ubisoft does a concurrent forward event. We're going to get the full-blown reveal and everything, and that's major. That's way more than I would have guessed before reading Julian's tweet. But when you think about it, it makes sense for all of those reasons I already mentioned: their proficiency with Snowdrop, their familiarity with the genre. Now, they are working with a new IP, and that presents its own, level of challenge, but when they're already wildly skilled with the tools they're using, Snowdrop in the Division 1 and 2, I can imagine how that can speed things up a lot. And if you think about it, Division 2 was made in under 3 years. And if this Star Wars game did begin, let's say mid-2020, which I'm under the impression that it did, then they're already coming up on that 3-year mark. So that's all exciting exciting in and of itself. I'm absolutely going to play both Avatar and Star Wars. I'm very anxious to see what Massive can do with other IPs and what the newer versions of Snowdrop have to offer, but I'm sure you're all wondering, how does this connect to The Division 3? There's been a lot of Division 3 chatter in the community these past few months. Some are feeling extra desire for it due to their disappointments with The Division 2's current content. Some are just wondering if it's on the way soon, since it was only a 3-year gap between Division 1 and 2, and we're now approaching the 4th full year since The Division 2's release. A lot of unanswered questions. Now, while many seem to be convinced that a secret Division 3 game is in the works and will be released either this year or in 2024, I have never been convinced of that. Primarily because there's simply no way Massive could have ever been working on it in conjunction to Avatar and Star Wars. There's just not enough people or resources. Now, many who believe this also believe that the game won't in fact be made by Massive and is being developed by a different Ubisoft studio. I buy that even less. Now, let me be clear. I have nothing to back that up. It could be true. And at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure Ubi would get the final call on what studio develops the game if they, wanted to get it made. However, I also know that at this point, Massive has major sway within that company. I mean, look no further than the fact that Ubi gave them Avatar and Star Wars, some of the biggest franchises ever on Earth, unquestionably among the biggest licensing deals Ubi has ever had, both given to Massive. I think people forget the significance of that sometimes. So, while it is possible that another studio could be developing now or in the future could develop a Division 3, I don't think Massive would ever want to give up that control. Division is their baby. It got them to where they are. I mean, it's nothing short of fundamental to Massive's DNA, simply put. And they're gonna let somebody else make the third game? Nah, I don't buy it. So it's been my prediction for a while that at this point that probably the earliest we would see the Division 3 is 2027, and that's kind of optimistic because I don't think any work would really begin on it until Star Wars ramps up and that OG team could return back to the Division IP. That was until we got this Star Wars project news from Julian. Now, I still think we're a ways out from Division 3 if it happens. Let's not forget that it is not confirmed, but all of this 2023 Star Wars buzz has reframed a lot of my viewpoint towards the Division 3, and I'm beginning to wonder if there's a certain path being laid out here. So let me just walk you all through what I'm thinking. There's been a much greater emphasis put on the long-term planning and connectivity of the Division universe recently. I mean, really ever since we got that announcement back in 2021. I mean, you've got the Division 2 story pushing things forward, the novels are all canonical, they tie in, the detail to ensure that everything aligns correctly there is painstaking, and the latest one, Compromise, takes place several months into the future from the Division 2, all interconnected. Resurgence takes place in between the Division 1 and 2, and they said it's all in line with the greater story and lore of the universe. Heartland has said in its reveal trailer that it's canon, it ties into the Division world and story. Like, even though it's taken a while for this whole Division universe to get going, you can't deny their commitment to actually making it a connected universe. My point being, if there are plans for a Division 3, they've no doubt mapped it out and know what it would be about, how far it would take the story, and how they'd build up to it and get there in these other projects that they've currently got running. At the same time, Massive has expanded in size and reputation vastly since the Division 2's release. They've moved into a whole new larger building to allow for team and staff expansion, and like we talked about a minute ago, Ubisoft is clearly very impressed with them, evident by them getting the Avatar and Star Wars projects. I'm pretty sure I even recall Ubi saying that Massive is the crown jewel in the crown of all of their studios. That's high praise. Bottom line point being, the Division universe is more robust and planned out than ever, and Massive is more equipped and reliable than ever before. I think that can make for a perfect storm for us Division fans. We know that Ubisoft is looking to replicate the strategic template that Assassin's Creed is using right now with the Division. I'll link that in the top corner if you want to know more about that. And part of what Assassin's Creed is doing is making these announcements for projects that are years out in order to show their commitment to the IP and to get fans excited. While Division is expanding into new territories with the likes of Heartland and Resurgence, I think Ubi may want to take things one step further. I think regardless of if this Star Wars game is planned to come out this year or next, Ubi has confidence that the team will hit its deadline because of all those aforementioned factors that we talked about. Massive is reliable, this team in particular, and like I said, at the same time, the Division 2 team and all other active Division devs have been working to make this universe more robust and mapped out than ever. It wouldn't surprise me in the least if a small team at Massive or Red Storm or wherever has been doing a specific job planning out and pre-producing Division 3 for a while, choosing which city to focus on, what the core ideas would be, etc. And so, as I know a few of you have predicted recently, I think it's absolutely in the realm of possibility, dare I say even potentially likely, that we could get a Division 3 announcement this year in the same vein as Assassin's Creed's Projects Red and Hex, where Ubi says, hey, we want you all to know that we are planning on doing a Division 3, but it is still several years away. Once we ship this Star Wars game, the OG Division development team will come back to work on the mainline series. And while in the general gaming industry, that would be a very risky promise to make because of how far out everything is, like I said, Julian, Frederick, and the rest of the Star Wars team have clearly been killing it. They've made significant progress on this new IP in the past 2.5 years. Think of the efficiency they would have working on another Division title in a franchise in which they've already had vast experience on. I think if Division 3 3 is in the cards. The path to making it happen is already well established. It's just a matter of time. Thank you all so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe with notifications on so you can be updated every time I upload. Let me know your thoughts on any and everything surrounding this discussion with massive Star Wars project and The Division 3. On one side of it, what are your thoughts on this Star Wars game? What do you think Julian's comments will translate to for it in 2023? And also, what are you thinking about all of this in relation to The Division 3? Could you see a sort of long-term announcement made about the game this year? Whatever you all are thinking about those or anything else we discussed, I will as always be very eager to read through your comments. Lots of exciting stuff coming this year, guys. Like I said, I'm excited to check out both Avatar and Star Wars. I think Massive is one of the finest developers in the industry right now, but of course, Division is in my heart, and if all of this means that we're one step closer to a Division 3 game becoming a reality, well then that's just plain exciting. That's going to do it for me today, though, everybody. Once again, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and until the next one, guys, RogueGold. Ow.